So we have seen some of these partnerships come and go as we are looking at, we're not quite in version 2 of US sports betting quite yet. Obviously, we still need Texas. We still need to figure out what's going to happen in California. Will there be any sort of expansion in Florida, or will it be an opposite? So we're still in V1, a more mature V1 here, but as we enter V2, Adam, listen, the questions we're going to continue to ask is, will there be consolidation? Will there be people who just decide this isn't for them? Are there going to be someone emerge because they have money and they're going to go crazy with all of that? Well, this story here seems like one of the gaming giants globally might be deciding that the U.S. just isn't quite for them.
Basically, what we've seen, Matt, in the first almost 6 years of this is that success in other markets does not dictate success in the U.S. sports betting market. And a number of international operators who've come over and tried to make a go of it have not been either willing to spend at the levels that FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, Caesars have been, or when they have spent, it just has not resulted in any sort of real acquisition. They've come over here with products that were more geared to the European market. They've come over here and just not been willing to play in the same way that has been required to succeed so far. Does that mean that they couldn't succeed in the long run? No, but the cash burn at this point for a lot of these either larger European operators who have a smaller presence in the US or other upstarts just really has not been something that is viable. So now we see that 888, which of course has had some leadership changes and challenges going on with that company, ending that SI Sportsbook deal. And I think it's important for us to talk about, Matt, Sports Illustrated in particular, and then the greater media brand landscape, because what we've seen through almost 6 years of the legal market in the US is that a media brand means nothing. Absolutely nothing without product and execution and marketing behind it. Because granted, the Sports Illustrated brand, for guys like you and me who grew up with Sports Illustrated being a paragon of journalism, being something that you waited for in the mail every week to get that paper magazine, well, that brand is basically nothing now. It has been stripped and it is basically on the side of the road on life support. So now you evaluate, okay, Barstool did not work out. Frankly, it might be the closest to success that we saw. The Score did not work out in the U.S. market in any way, and it remains to be seen with ESPN, but the early returns that we've witnessed from the Penn ESPN deal are middling, so we don't really know where that's going to take off in the end. So I think the thought that we had that these big media partnerships and the reach and the access they provide would be something that was important, something that would be leading to success, is not necessarily the case without something more behind it.
Yeah, it's interesting because 888, if you guys aren't in tune with what's going on in Europe, they have William Hill over in Europe. William Hill, you walk down the street, there's William Hills all over the place. William Hill, a wildly successful brand over in Europe. 888 was always very curious as to what they were going to do here in the United States. Obviously, a company that knows what they're doing when it comes to gambling. Obviously, a company that has been in the space as long as anybody and has as much experience as anybody. But they came over here, Adam, and it's like, so I'll read from this press release that I got from them that just says they're also entering a strategic review of their American operations. And it says the strategic review of our U.S. B2C operations will continue at pace, and I look forward to updating shareholders on our plans for the wider group in late March. And that's per their CEO in this release. It continues on with, there can be no assurance regarding the results or outcome of the review. So it's pretty interesting that this is almost laying the groundwork, it seems like to me, Adam, of them saying, okay, we tried this US thing. We kind of stuck our toe in because they didn't really go full bore, right? Like they just kind of stuck their toe in. It didn't get the results they were hoping for. And it seems like now they're like, look, we do well in Europe. What are we doing over here trying to fight against these guys that, again, you and I say it's not like DraftKings and FanDuel have this thing on an absolute chokehold, but in the near future, and I would even say into the near to medium future, really people's aspirations is only to be number 3, right? I mean, like, I don't think you can really look at this and say like, hey, we want to be number 1, number 2. Maybe you say that from a decade down the road, whatever. Like our 10-year goal is to be number 1, but you're really just trying to fight to be number 3 right now. And maybe 888 just looks at it and says, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
They're not alone in that. There are a lot of smaller operators, and I say smaller not in any disrespect to 888, but smaller in terms of U.S. presence, who have looked at this and say, yeah, the Yeehaw Cowboys and their same game parlays are not the way that we're going to be able to succeed, right? Like, we're just not able to keep up with what DraftKings and FanDuel had done tech-wise in DFS to prepare for this, and then the heft of MGM, Caesars, and so on, 365 you could even throw in there, who have endless resources to be able to push into this thing. Now, that doesn't mean that MGM and Caesars are pushing endless resources into this thing at the level of DraftKings and FanDuel, and that's part of why those latter two are the two in the lead. I agree with you that the duopoly doesn't necessarily mean that it's a duopoly forever, because who's to say that the spending rate that has established those two as the leaders will keep up for them, and that others won't try to spend at a more prodigious rate to chase them. But the question really, when it comes to what we're talking about right now, is if you're an 888 level operator in the US, if you're less than 1% share, how long do you really want to hold on here? Like, we've seen some operators say, well, we want to see what happens with iGaming. Newsflash, that's not happening anytime soon, right? If you think it's hard to pass sports betting, good luck passing iGaming in the time frame that's going to allow you to sort of limp along until you can bring an iGaming product into the US market. And by the way, it's not as though FanDuel, DraftKings et al. Are sitting around on their butts waiting for iGaming legislation to pass. They're pushing their product hard in the markets where it's already legal, and they're refining their product to have it ready for future state launches as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, it's one of those deals where, as you kind of read this along, you're, and Authentic Brands, by the way, is the company that owns Sports Illustrated. So it's talking about the actual press release is the breaking of the relationship with Authentic Brands and stuff. And it's how about this one, Adam? The partnership had granted exclusive use of the Sports Illustrated brand for online betting and gaming. As part of the termination agreement, 888 has agreed to pay a fee of $25 million that will be paid in cash from available resources. Additionally, 888 will pay an extra $25 million between 2027 and 2029 to break the agreement. So it's worth $50 million to them to break this agreement. If you're wondering like how little they have reaped any rewards from this partnership over in the United States, it's worth 25 up front and 25 down the line to go ahead and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, amazing how Authentic Brands, when they decide, you know what, we're just going to let go of all of our reporters and find a way to monetize a website, how desperate 888 might be to be like, yeah, you know what, we need away from you sooner than later.
Yeah, it's just interesting stuff there in that one. Of course, anything that comes down further, like we said, he said he hopes to have an update for the shareholders by late March. So, I mean, obviously we're only a few weeks away from that. So there will be more to that story for sure.